Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. I have 2 games finished so far and I'm quite happy about my start. I managed to win one 3-player game and finished second in one of the 2 4-player games. With that I'm at 8 points at the moment. The next game will be the second one of the 4-player games, so that will be quite interesting because all of the players will be involved, and now without further ado we are going to take a look at the game. In this game I am in the second position, and first of all we're going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that there is not the most theater synergy in H3. There is no Fleming, no Chaplin, no Marlene, and also no Hollywood, but there's definitely some lab synergy with Bill Gates, Einstein, Marie Curie, Steve Jobs, also the spaceflight Manhattan Project is there, as well as the internet. There's also Pierre, there's Mandela, and also Gandhi is there, and the Manhattan Project is set, so some important leaders and wonders for the military. In H2 we do have some culture leaders with Antoni Gaudi and Bach. We also have 2 military action leaders with Napoleon and Robespierre. There's James Cook but no Suez Canal. There's Newton together with Nobel, so some economical leaders. And then there's no ocean liner service, but there's the Harvard College, the railroad, and the Statue of Liberty maybe as some nice economical wonders. And in H1 we have the Great Wall but no Himeji Castle. We have the Forbidden City but no St. Peter's Basilica. There's the Universitas, there's the Machu Picchu. We have no military action leader in H1, but we have some strength leaders with Barbarossa and Genghis Khan. Then we have we have Saladin, we have Isabella. We also have the 2 lab and printing press leaders with Leonardo and Gutenberg, and also Michelangelo is there. PV4 is in the first position and he starts with taking the pyramids, which is definitely a very strong wonder. And I'm in the second position and I will start with taking Confucius. Of course I could also think about taking one of those wonders. The Stonehenge could be interesting, the Colosseum is definitely also not bad in a 4-player game. But I can take Confucius and I can take him together with the yellow card, and I like Confucius quite a lot. There's a bit of a risk, I don't know which wonder I will be getting, and the 2 wonders that could come out of the deck are maybe not that great. There is no Suez Canal in the game for the Colossus, and the Acropolis is maybe not that great in 4-player games, but the good thing about Confucius is that he produces some additional science, and with that it's maybe fine to also skip an HA wonder because you have science to invest into technologies very early, and then I maybe could also just hope to get an early Universitas or Forbidden City or something like this. So I think it's not too bad that I don't have certainty which wonder I will be getting, and I can take Confucius. I can also take a copy of Frugality. I don't think it really makes a big difference which one of those copies I will take, because the other one will very likely also be taken. And then that's my first turn. Svin will take the Stonehenge over the Colosseum, so he likes this wonder maybe a little bit more, and he also will take the Frugality, so he takes the other copy of this. Angor will then go for Ashoka, and he will also go for the Colosseum, has a leader, has a wonder, and at the next turn he will have a free civil action, thanks to already having a leader and a wonder, and that he can use to maybe pick a yellow card so that he already has a color in hand for Ashoka. PV4 will take the Engineering Genius. He has to make a decision now whether he wants to go for Sun Tzu or not. There's no Suez Canal, not really a lot of colonization synergy in the game, but maybe with being in first position he could still consider going for Strength Push, but instead he rather just builds a mine, increases population, takes the Engineering Genius and the Urban Growth, so he delays getting his leader, which is maybe not ideal, but he at least gets 3 resources instead of the leader, and at the next turn maybe he is eyeing Aristotle at the moment and can then go for Aristotle together with the pyramids, which is definitely quite a nice combination. Then it's my turn. I elect Confucius, build a mine, increase my population, and I will take this urban growth. I can use it to build a second lab, so that's relatively nice. And I also don't think it's bad to take a card from a row, of course, with those HA YOLO cards being not that important. I could also consider taking the stockpile if I think it makes a difference for the card row movement. For example, maybe there's a chance that Aristotle stays in 2 civil actions for PV4, but I don't think that's the case, because Svin will very likely go for Cleopatra, and then even if I don't take this urban growth, Aristotle would be available for 1 civil action for PV4 anyway, and then it's maybe even better to take another card so that there are more cards revealed before my next turn, and I maybe already have some Knights H1 cards available. I draw 2 colonization cards. One of them I maybe have to seed at the next turn with having Confucius. Svin will indeed go for Cleopatra, and he will start with building a mine and 1 stage of the Stonehenge, with already getting some additional science from the Stonehenge. He maybe doesn't want to go for the lab first. Then it's Angor's turn. He will go for Ashoka, builds a mine, increases population, and then he basically has no choice but to take the cultural heritage. It's the only card that he can take, and with having Ashoka, he definitely wants to take it so that he has the first color in hand. PV4 seeds, and the development of markets is revealed. That will allow him to finish the pyramids immediately, so that's quite nice for him. And then he also has 2 civil actions left that he can use for taking and electing Aristotle, so he has the pyramids and Aristotle combination set up very early. At the next turn he can maybe build a second lab, and maybe he can also already start taking some technologies. I will then indeed seed one of my colonization cards. I don't want to miss out on the one science from Confucius. The development of religion is opened. All players can take it, apart from Swin. He doesn't have a free population. And this turn I had a little bit of a big decision to make. Because one thing that I considered was to take this early iron for 3 and then increase my population to get out of corruption. In this case, and with that you already know that I won't go for this play. In this case I would have not used the frugality, then I would be out of corruption, and at the next turn, thanks to Confucius, I would have enough science to go for iron immediately. I could go for some very early iron, start some very nice production, and after I have the production, maybe a nice H1 wonder will be available for me. Then I could invest those resources into maybe Universitas, Forbidden City, Machu Picchu, and I think that really could turn out to be quite a nice start, but it would also be a bit costly to take the iron for 3. I think it definitely should be considered here, and I think it might also work out relatively nicely, but I think there are also some strong and interesting cards available for 1 civil action that actually synergize quite well with each other, and so instead of going for the iron, I at the end went for building my second lab, and then I went for Barbarossa and the Great Wall. No, so I don't go for this early iron, but I get Barbarossa and the Great Wall, and as I said, I think those two definitely synergize quite well with each other. I was a little bit uncertain, because with having those 2 cards, I maybe should try to go for a little bit of an early aggressive play, which is maybe not really my playstyle, and I don't do it that often, so maybe I didn't feel too comfortable going for this, but I just think it has to be the strongest here. Great Wall has a lot of potential. Barbarossa can also be very strong, and then maybe I can just go for a lot of strength, and that could give me quite a bit of potential. So I at the end rather went for this instead of going for this early iron. If there would be no interesting cards available for 1, then I think taking iron for 3 could be quite strong here. I also considered maybe only taking one of those 2 and then maybe taking the rich land instead, for example only Barbarossa and then the rich land, maybe hoping to still get an early Universitas, or going for the Great Wall and then the rich land, not going for Barbarossa, but I just think those 2 have to be together, and so I took both of them. I do draw 2 strength events. That's definitely not bad to have. Swin seeds, and the development of trade routes is revealed, so a lot of seeding is going on. Every player has seeded so far, and Swin this turn will build 1 stage of the Stonehenge, and then he actually will go for the Code of Laws, can develop it immediately. However, it comes at a price, because he can't get out of corruption, so he gets the Code of Laws going immediately, but because of all of those developments being revealed, he won't be able to get out of corruption, but is willing to have the corruption in order to get this Code of Laws going. Angor will take the free religion, he can increase his population, builds the second lab, and then he will take this early copy of iron. Thanks to the development of trade routes, he has enough science to go for it immediately at the next turn if he wants to. PV4 will seed again, the development of crafts are revealed. He will take this alchemy for 2 civil actions, could maybe also do something with Gutenberg, but the problem is that then he maybe has to delay going for this alchemy, and he just wants to go for it immediately, uses the urban growth, builds an alchemy directly, has now 3 science production going, and also has already 5 civil actions with the pyramid, so I think he has definitely quite a nice start. Now it's my turn. I see the call to arms. I might, with seeding a lot, have actually the most culture for the barbarians, so I didn't want to see this event and rather seeded a call to arms. The event that is revealed is the development of warfare. Sadly, I won't be able to take a free warrior, but the good thing is PV4 and Angor also both don't have a free population. Swin has one, but he missed out on the free religion, so I think it's relatively balanced, and maybe probably even worse for Swin, because the free religion is probably better than the free warrior. thanks to all of those developments being revealed, I actually have quite a lot of resources available, and I would have even enough to just finish the Great Wall, which would be a very easy way to get out of corruption. Actually, the only way to get out of corruption, if I don't want to increase my population or switch to Barbarossa already, so I could maybe finish the Great Wall, keep Confucius for at least one turn longer, get more science out of him. So that could definitely be an idea, and I considered just finishing the Great Wall. But at the end I went for something different, because I thought it might be very nice to have this monarchy available. And I don't have enough science to develop it immediately, but I actually have enough science when I'm willing to go for Barbarossa, and I have to go for him anyway, because now that I don't finish the Great Wall, he will help me to get out of corruption, but he also will allow me, thanks to Confucius giving one science when he leaves play, to go for the monarchy immediately, and then I can get out of corruption. For that I have to build 2 stages, and I have to use Barbarossa to build 1 warrior, so I don't finish the Great Wall this turn, but which means that I can't keep Confucius, but the event deck has flipped quite quickly, and if my opponents maybe now get stronger or something, then who knows, maybe I don't necessarily even want to seed at the next turn, so it's maybe not too bad to already switch to Barbarossa, and I just think the monarchy is quite nice here, on one hand giving me a boost for my economy with getting the 5th civil action, but also getting the 3rd military action, which is of course very nice to have with Barbarossa. I draw 2 cards, not a colonization card and a border conflict. Those are definitely quite nice cards. The development of civil life is opened by SAPOFANE. I was not too happy to see this event, because the only way I can use this is to increase my population, but then I don't have any food left for Barbarossa, so at my next turn I will actually just skip it and not take anything from the development of civil life, or not use it. SAPOFANE this turn will finish the Stonehenge, will also build a 2nd lab, has now quite some science available. He will also build even another warrior, reveals the Legion tactic, which makes him the strongest. At least I can maybe at some point copy the Legion tactic. I don't have a tactic in hand yet, and with having the Great Wall and with maybe wanting to go for a bunch of warriors, it could be nice to have this tactic available. And then SAPOFANE still wants to go for the knights. Maybe he still hopes, or maybe has already a tactic in hand, or just wants to have the option to go for knights at some point, and having a military technology in hand is definitely not bad. Angor seeds, and he will open the raiders thanks to having 1 additional warrior. I don't get hit by that, I'm not one of the 2 weakest, and Angor will then build 1 additional warrior. He will go for the cartography, and he will actually develop the cartography, which surprised me a little bit, because he didn't seed any of those events. And the only event that he has seeded is only coming in the next deck, and there's also no Suez Canal in the game, so that came a little bit as a surprise for me. I rather expected him to maybe go for iron, and then maybe take cartography in hand to have another color in hand for Ashoka, but he is actually willing to develop it. Maybe he also just wants to have the additional strength. Maybe he has no defense card in hand and is afraid of getting hit by a potential aggression from SAPOFANE, and who knows, maybe there are some colonies coming, and maybe he just seeded a very strong one into the deck. And then he will also take the breakthrough in the theology. With that he has the full Ashoka bonus. The breakthrough will definitely be quite nice, and maybe he can go for iron at some point. PV4 is willing to take the swordsman even for 3 civil actions. Maybe he also just needs to get a little bit stronger. At least he has a lot of civil actions, or 5 with the pyramids, so he can maybe allow it to himself to take that for that many civil actions. And with that he also makes sure that he isn't the weakest after his turn. I'm now actually the weakest, so it's indeed a case that I don't want to see it. So I just skip the politics phase, and then I will finish the Great Wall this turn. It's just the easiest way to get out of corruption. Also, I want to get stronger, so I not only finish the Great Wall, but I also use Barbarossa again for another warrior. That makes it that I'm already at 6 strength, and I'm the strongest again, so that I don't get hit by the call to arms. Maybe there are even more strength events seeded by my opponents. Now I just have some civil actions left, so I could just I can just take a bunch of cards, and one card that I wanted to have is this copy of reserves. I think in this case it's even better to have than the rich land, because first of all it gives me flexibility, but second of all, and more importantly, I can use it for food, and with that I can maybe get an additional Barbarossa activation out, which might be quite strong. So I really wanted to have this reserves, but I also still wanted to have the rich land. It's still a very efficient card, and I can maybe use it to go for some iron or farm upgrades relatively quickly. And then I have 2 civil actions left. I considered either taking one of those yellow cards or maybe taking the alchemy. With having the alchemy, I might have the chance to go for an upgrade at the next turn. I could even go for an upgrade, still play the reserves for food, and go even for another warrior. I thought it could be very nice to go for another warrior the next turn, because I can maybe go for warrior and copy the Legion tactic. Then I'm at 10 strength. I sadly don't have an aggression in hand, but still it maybe forces some awkward responses out of my opponents, so that could be quite nice. But the good thing is I could do this, and I could even go for alchemy, so taking the alchemy could be quite nice. On the other hand, this copy of alchemy will stay on 2 civil action for Swin. I mean, he will maybe go for it. It's actually relatively likely that he will go for it, because he maybe wants to have a new project for Cleopatra. But I thought that Angor maybe won't be going for the alchemy, because he has a full hand. He has really a lot to do to get out of corruption. Probably has to finish the Colosseum, and after that he has no free hand space. So I was thinking that he will very likely not take a copy of alchemy. PvP4 already has one, so I thought it's maybe not necessary to take a copy of alchemy this turn, and I can still go for it at the next turn. And with that I also made a decision to go for the breakthrough instead of the cultural heritage. Cultural heritage maybe could, for example, allow me to go for iron at the next turn if one should be available, and or maybe for knights if I want to go for a new military unit and don't want to only go for warriors, but I don't have a knights tactic yet, so that's maybe rather unlikely. But with me thinking that one of those alchemies will hopefully be available for me at the next turn, I was willing to take the breakthrough, because it's just a more efficient card. I keep the 2 colonization cards. Angor went for the cartography, so maybe there will be a colony coming at some point, and winning a colony with Barbarossa is quite a nice thing. I also have the phalanx tactic in hand now. Swin seeds and the historic territory is revealed now, but actually only Angor is willing to bid for it. I mean, as I said, it could be nice to win a colony with Barbarossa, but I also have maybe a way to really put some pressure on my opponents at the next turn, and with having Great Wall and a free religion, I have already 2 happy phases, so I don't really need a happy phase, and I just felt like that might even be weakening my position. Maybe it might be nice long term when I at some point need a happy phase, but I wasn't willing to bid for that. And so Angor is able to win it, and he just has to pay 1 warrior. Swin will go for the alchemy, and he will go for an upgrade. He also goes for bread and circuses and a cultural heritage. Then he will draw 2 cards. Angor offers the open borders agreement to PvP4, so sadly I'm not part of that. He will finish the Colosseum, and he will play the cultural heritage, and as we can see he does not take the alchemy. It will also not be in the discard spot on PvP4's turn, so I was hoping that I will be able to go for the alchemy at my turn. There's also the iron, but that one will be taken away by PvP4. He could even go for it immediately with scoring the science from Aristotle, but instead he also takes the Code of Laws and goes for that immediately, and he has already now taken quite a nice amount of technologies with Aristotle, so definitely has gotten some nice value out of him. He will go for another swordsman. That makes him even the strongest now. Now it's my turn, and this turn I am willing to cede again. I'm one of the 2 strongest. I would not get hit by the call to arms, and also I don't have any knowledge about any other strength events. One that I have knowledge about is the border conflict, but it will only be in the next deck, so I definitely was willing to cede here. Confucius event is revealed. That could be interesting, because potentially it could allow me to go for the knights here. And going for the knights might give me a little bit more strength, because I could play the phalanx tactic, and I would also draw an additional card, because I don't have to copy the legion tactic. So I thought about going for the knights, but I think it's not the right way to go here, because it actually only gives me 1 additional strength. The warrior and the knight gives me the same amount of strength, and I only get 1 more because I have the phalanx instead of the legion tactic, and I would invest 5 science into it. I could go for it, but if I go for it, then I can't go for the alchemy, and as I said at the last turn, the nice thing is that I can go for 1 warrior, and then I have still 3 resources left, and after copying the legion tactic, I did even draw an aggression, so with that I could of course also wait with copying the tactic, but I definitely want to do it in H1, so I just felt why not do it now. Maybe I can't really use the next politics phase if all of my opponents prepare themselves for an aggression, but there's maybe a chance that I can try an aggression, especially against Angor, who has only the possibility to increase his population once, and if he doesn't have a nice tactic that he can use with 2 units, then he might actually be a little bit in trouble. So I thought maybe I have a shot to pull this aggression off, and so I copied the legion tactic, and then after that I can still go for 1 upgrade to the alchemy, which is nice, increasing my science production, and then I have 1 last civil action left, and I just took another reserves Again, it might just give me a bit of flexibility. I can play it for food. Maybe it will allow me to get another Barbarossa activation, so that might actually cause some uprising issues. So in that case, it's maybe not that important to get the additional food, but maybe, who knows, depending on what events are revealed, it could still be nice, and maybe it could enable an additional activation without causing uprising issues once the age will end, and it can also just be played for resources to maybe get some upgrades going quicker. I will discard the Legion tactic now that I committed to even another warrior. SAPOFANE will take the swordsman, he develops the swordsman, and then he just goes for 2 upgrades, which means that he is at 7 strength, so he looks relatively nicely prepared, especially because instead of upgrading one of those warriors, he could have also, after increasing his population, he would have enough resource to just build a swordsman and go for an upgrade, and then he would be at 8 strength, so if he would be in danger of an aggression, he could just do this. On the other hand, it would potentially cause some uprising issues for him at some point. And but it definitely looks like he might be prepared for an aggression. But he actually, at the turn before, seeded his last event, and then during his turn he had no cards in hand, so those 2 are the only cards that he has drawn from that point on. So of course, then maybe it's not that likely that he actually has a defense card, but if he has none, then maybe he should rather go for building a swordsman, so I still expected him to have a defense card, but I was also a little bit suspicious about the situation. And then SAPOFANE will also go for an additional upgrade to the alchemy. That, on the other hand, would not be possible if he goes for an additional swordsman, so maybe he just doesn't want to build this in order to not have any uprising issues and in order to go for the alchemy upgrade. Angor will go for the knights. He has only 1 population, that puts him at the moment only at 4 strength, so he would need 2 defense cards, and as we can see, he is actually willing to destroy this religion at the moment. He has enough happy faces with the Colosseum and the historic territory, and he will even just build 2 knights, maybe indicating that he has the heavy cavalry tactic in hand, and with that he can defend. He has 4 military actions, and even if he has no defense card, he will be able to defend now. PV4 will take the masonry, scoring another science with Aristotle. He also takes the irrigation, so he has now taken 6 technologies, which is definitely not bad. And then he will go for an iron upgrade, goes up to 4 resource production. And with his last civil action, he will take the urban growth. With that, he can go for an upgrade to alchemy and for iron at the next turn. Now it's my turn, and I had to think about if I want to try this aggression or not. The only player who could be vulnerable would be SAPOFANE. But I thought it might be likely he has a defense card because of the actions that he has taken. And but on the other hand, I don't have anything else to do, and I only miss out on 1 H1 draw. And I also didn't think that I have very good chances to pull off the aggression in one of the following turns, and so I went for the aggression. And it actually is successful, so SAPOFANE did go for a little bit of a bluff here, and I don't blame him. I do the same quite often myself. And but in this time he gets punished for it. I didn't have any other option for my politics phase. If I would have something to seed, then maybe the bluff would have convinced me and I would have gone for seeding, but with only having the option to go for an aggression, I just wanted to try it out. And also with SAPOFANE having no card in hand at the turn before and only having drawn those 2 cards from then on, chances are also just not that high that he has a defense card, especially because I have knowledge about those 2. I also seeded 1 into the deck with Confucius, and at the end he gets quite heavily punished. Maybe played it a little bit too greedily, but I also very often go for greedy routes, so as I said, I don't blame him. But now he has lost his alchemy, and that's definitely quite a big setback for him. If he wants to rebuild it, he has to invest a civil action and 6 resources. If he doesn't rebuild it, then he will miss out on quite a lot of science production, so quite a big setback for him, and I gained 3 additional resources, which is of course quite nice for me. And this turn I will just go for the iron. I could of course think about going for the irrigation with the additional food. Maybe I could get another Barbarossa activation in, but I will be at 3 food. That will even be enough for 1 additional Barbarossa activation. But as I said, the next one will actually cause uprising, so maybe I could go for irrigation, increase my population, then at some point get another Barbarossa activation in, but I still rather wanted to go for the iron. There are some interesting H2 wonders like Harvard College, Railroad could maybe also be interesting, statue maybe not that much now that I have the monarchy, but I was not only looking at those H2 wonders, I was also looking at the Forbidden City, and I thought that maybe I can set myself up relatively nicely to go for the Forbidden City at the next turn. So I will go for one iron upgrade, and then I have to decide whether I want to go for another iron upgrade or for an upgrade to the alchemy. And at the end I went for an upgrade to the alchemy because I thought the science might be quite useful, the resource of course as well, but the plan that I had for the next 2 turns, or of course plans might change, but what I had for an idea for the next 2 turns didn't really require the one additional resource from the upgrade now, because I thought the Forbidden City could be quite interesting for me. Both of the Code of Laws are gone, and then being only at 5 civil actions with the monarchy can be a little bit restricting, so getting the additional civil action might be quite nice. At the moment I have enough happy phases, but as I said, if I get another Barbarossa activation, I have an uprising issue once the age will end, so the Forbidden City and the ignored unhappy workers will actually allow me to go for this Barbarossa activation after I finish the Forbidden City. So with those 2 reasons I thought the Forbidden City might be quite nice. I was hoping that I have a relatively nice chance to get it. PvP4 has already quite a bunch of civil actions, so maybe doesn't want to invest into the Forbidden City, and for the other players it will be available only relatively costly. And so my plan was to take the Forbidden City next turn. Even when I go for this alchemy upgrade, I have still just enough resources to go for 2 iron upgrades the next turn. That means I will have 6 resources in 2 turns, which is not enough to finish the Forbidden City, but if I play the reserves for resources, then it actually is enough. Then I can't play it for food, but I will be sitting at 3 food, which is just enough to go for another Barbarossa activation, so I thought I very likely won't have to play it for food, and then I can play it for resources and finish the Forbidden City in 2 turns. Of course there might be other cards available, and I maybe will change my plans, but with having this idea and this plan at the moment, I at the end rather wanted to have the additional science, because I don't really need the additional resource to go for this Forbidden City plan, and I can still go for 2 iron upgrades at the next turn. And I just felt like that could be a nice continuation of the game, going for those 2 iron upgrades, then going for Forbidden City, and with that I didn't want to go for irrigation, even though of course it has some synergies with Barbarossa. I don't draw an event, but I do draw 2 pacts actually. SAPOFANE Seeds, and here opens the Knowledge of the Ancients. I go in only 1 science out of it, with having gone for an H1 Wonder first. SAPOFANE will go for Leonardo. He works nicely with the alchemy. No, but of course it's quite bad for SAPOFANE that he has lost the alchemy in this turn. Of course he knows that I know that he doesn't have a defense card, so he kinda has to get stronger. Otherwise maybe he could have rebuilt it immediately with Cleo's resource. He still wants to use Cleo's resources, and so he goes for Burden Circuses, also goes for an upgrade, is now the 2nd strongest and no longer in danger of an aggression. Then H2 starts. 2 of my opponents actually lose their leader, PV4 and Angor. Angor will then increase his population, builds not a knight, he also goes for the iron, at least develops it already, takes the rich land, and he has the heavy cavalry that, no, I thought that was quite likely, and then he takes the rich land and the monarchy. Now it's PV first turn, he will go for Saladin. There are some leaders that he could go for, but maybe the Saladin is just the most solid, with giving him some guaranteed value. Maybe Michelangelo could have some potential, but he is also a little bit uncertain in what he will give him. On the other hand, he would be available for 1 civil action cheaper. Maybe he could then take the Engineering Genius, so I think the Michelangelo maybe could be an interesting idea here. Maybe could even go for the Eiffel Tower at the next turn already, and then with having Michelangelo and Engineering Genius and having the iron production and the masonry, I think he would have some nice potential to go for some wonders, but it's always also a little bit uncertain on how much value Michelangelo will give at the end, and PV4 makes the decision here to rather go for the safe value from Saladin. Now it's my turn again. I have some pacts, and at the end I made a decision to go for the Naval Trade Agreement, because Angor went for this cartography early on, and I thought that should probably mean that he has seeded a colony, otherwise it would be quite big of a gamble. I mean, maybe he really needed the strength, but I was expecting maybe there are some colonies coming, and winning a colony with Barbarossa could be quite nice, and I was also hoping that losing the 1 blue token won't cause any corruption issues at the next turn, so I offered a Naval Trade Agreement to SAPOFANE. I either wanted to offer it to SAPOFANE or to PV4, because Angor might not accept it, with him maybe wanting to win those colonies that potentially are coming. And no, I thought that maybe the 2 blue tokens could potentially even he helps win a little bit more because he is on bronze mines. Maybe the ability to collect more resources could be quite nice for him, also with being stuck at 3 food at the moment. But on the other hand, I also felt like after Swin losing this alchemy, he might have the worst position. PV4 has a lot of civil actions and also has quite some nice production going, so I felt Swin at the moment has the worst position, and so I rather wanted to offer the pack to him at the end, and at least it doesn't help him with corruption immediately, or maybe makes it a little bit easier to get out of corruption, but at least this turn I thought it doesn't make a big difference for him. Maybe it will help him to collect some resources, but I was willing to accept this. Then I will go for 2 iron upgrades as planned. I'm now at 6 production, so that's very nice. I will indeed go for the Forbidden City. Of course, I could maybe wait and hope that I get nice H2 Wonder. If there's an early Harvard College, maybe I will regret going for the Forbidden City, but my plan is to finish it immediately the next turn, and after that maybe I can still go for a nice H2 Wonder. And the good thing is I not only get a Forbidden City, I even get the Engineering Genius available for 1 civil action. That is quite nice, so I can even finish the Forbidden City at the next turn without needing to play the reserves, and I have even 1 resource left after that, meaning I could potentially even do a Barbarossa activation immediately. Then I will draw some cards, no event sadly, but another defense card, so if there's a colony coming then that might be quite helpful. And sadly there is indeed an early Harvard College coming down the road, so with that I was a little bit regretting my choice. I still think it maybe was the right choice, because also I think there was not that much else what I could have done with the civil actions, but now I sadly very likely won't have the chance to take the Harvard College. Swin will rebuild the 2nd lab and get some science production back. Angor will try an aggression against PV4. Both of them have the open borders agreement. Because of that, PV4 actually has to use quite a bunch of defense cards. Maybe he also took Saladin because he was afraid that he might need his strength ability. Angor will then go for Isabella. He also has some leaders to choose from, and no, Isabella is just very solid, and maybe another indicator that there are some colonies coming. Also this turn he's going for some iron production. He is still sitting at 4 civil actions, so that might be a bit of a problem for him, but he has the Colosseum, so maybe he can fix that at some point with the Republic, or of course also with the Constitutional Monarchy. PV4 is actually willing to go for a Godi for 3 civil actions, which is somewhat costly, but maybe he wants to get some value out of him immediately, and he actually will get some value out of him immediately. He will, after going for him, go for the team sports and build one that gets him out of corruption, and maybe also prepares him for some potential happy face related events. Also helps him a little bit with the strength, but it feels a little bit costly to go for Anthony Gaudi. On the other hand, he has a lot of civil actions anyway, so Saladin is maybe not needed that much, and Gaudi is probably a quite improvement for him, but maybe he also could have a chance to get him at the next turn, but who knows. Maybe I would even be interested in him, but then I can't finish the Forbidden City if I want to take him. So, an interesting choice. He misses out on the Revolutionary Idea, for example. Maybe that could allow him to go for government form at the next turn already. So, an interesting choice, but he can get some value out of him immediately with going for the team sports. Maybe there are indeed some happy face related events coming, and he already gets 3 culture production out of him. Then it is my turn. I won't use my politics phase. I could think about offering a scientific cooperation to someone, but I won't develop a technology this turn. It would also cancel the other pact, so I didn't like this too much. And then this turn I will just finish the Forbidden City. After this I have 2 civil actions left. I will also use Barbarossa actually immediately, because if I don't use him and I would stay at 2 strength, then it would actually be the weakest after my turn, and I don't want that to happen. The call to arms I think is still coming, so I don't want to get hit by that. So I use Barbarossa again to not be the weakest. And then I still have 2 civil actions left. One card that I definitely wanted to take is the Revolutionary Idea. It's just, I think, very nice to get this card for 1 civil action. And then I have 1 civil action left. I could think about just playing the reserves, but then I would have to commit if I want to play it for resources or food. And I thought maybe it could be nice to delay this decision. And I also thought at least somewhat nice cards to take. Both opera and journalism, I think, could be considered here. Opera could be interesting because there's Bach, and with having the opera I might be set up to go for a nice Bach play, but the journalism also has some synergy because there's actually Newton, and as we mentioned at the beginning, there's not that much theater synergy in H3, so With that, I still considered going for Opera, because Bach is maybe a strong reason, even if he's the only strong leader together with the Opera. But with already having Alchemies, I felt like a nice Newton, which I think is probably the stronger leader than Bach in 4-player games, of course always depending on the situation. I rather wanted to be a setup for Newton. Of course, I could maybe also just go for Newton with Alchemies, but if I don't take this journalism now, then I felt like maybe PV4 could take it, because it just works very nicely with his Antoni Gaudi. And so I, at the end, went for taking the journalism with the Forbidden City I have now, maybe some happy faces, and if I somehow get an additional population going, then the journalism could maybe be nice to build, and also maybe allow me to go for strong Newton at some point. I keep just all of my defense cards, and I even draw another defense card and a war, so I can't push it the next turn, but maybe the war could have some potential. And all of those defense cards maybe could also help me with winning a strong colony potentially. Svin will go for the constitutional monarchy, and now he will then go for irrigation. Here we can definitely see that losing this alchemy was quite costly. I think the team is out on 1 or on 2 turns from the production. I think he definitely didn't rebuild immediately. Maybe he only missed out on 1 turn. Then he probably. But even with missing out on 1 turn of production only, he could have, instead of developing the irrigation, he would be at 8 signs, and with having 1 more production, he would be at 10. And then he could have taken the Conmon, played the Cultural Heritage, and went for the Conmon. So here we can see that missing out on some signs or resource can really be costly in these early stages of the game, because now he could have gone for the Conmon, that would have him allowed to do more stuff, and then he could maybe already do more stuff at the next turn. And like this, he has to go for the irrigation, but at least has just enough signs to go for the Conmon at the next turn. And at least irrigation will allow him to increase his population, which maybe will help him a little bit to get out of corruption. Then it's Angor's turn, he will cede, and their call to arms is revealed now, so Svin will lose 2 and PV4 1 civil action. Angor will go for the Harvard College. I think that's a very strong wonder for him, with still being on and not that great science production. And then he will go for one stage and also for 1 iron upgrade, and has now just enough resource to finish the Harvard College the next turn. So he at the moment sets himself up to go for some nice economy. He's not willing to go for the monarchy at this late point. He probably just rather wants to wait for an H2 government. And especially with having a Colosseum, and with that Republic also being a very nice choice, I think that makes a lot of sense. PV4 goes for 1 more iron upgrade, goes for the Gremlin, goes for the Cavalryman, and goes for the Frugality. So he just takes a bunch of cards, is willing to go for the Gremlin, but he also has quite a lot of happy faces. And now the team sports, of course, works very nicely now together with the Gremlin, and then he can even get more civil and military actions. Now it is my turn, and as you can see, I take this strategy, and I at this point thought that I might have the potential to go for a relatively nice war at the next turn. I have drawn this war, and and there are some interesting cards for me in a row. There's the strategy to get more military action, but there's also this copy of Rifleman. I will skip the cannons, but hopefully I might still have a chance to take one of the other cannons. But I think the Rifleman is way more important here, because it allows me to upgrade those warriors. My first idea was to just develop the strategy that makes sure that I'm the strongest. Maybe the event deck will flip, and then the border conflict could be revealed already, for example. And also developing the strategy would allow me to keep all of those cards in hand. If I don't develop it, I have to discard probably the 2 H1 defense cards, which would not be that great in case there's indeed a colony coming. But I came to the conclusion that there is something else that I can do with the civil action, which really might be worth it to miss out on those things that I just talked about, and that is taking this copy of reserves. And why is taking this copy of reserves quite nice? My idea was to go for war already the next turn. I have enough science to develop the strategy and the Rifleman, and if I don't take this reserves, I could then just go for 3 upgrades to a Rifleman, and that already gives me a decent amount of strength and would be enough to pull off a relatively nice war. But if I have the food from the reserves available, I can play it now for 3 food, and then I can even go for another Barbarossa activation, And if I go for another Rifleman, first of all, it will give me more strength from the Great Wall, but it will also fulfill even a second Legion tactic. So I really thought this reserves makes my war even quite a bit bigger. And with that, I was worth it to delay the strategy, even though it means that I have to discard those 2 defense cards, and maybe it could even mean I miss out on a potential strength event. But I just can't go for even more strength. I can get another Barbarossa activation, in which also is very efficient. And no, so my plan was to go for a war. The next turn I can develop the strategy. I can go for 1 new Rifleman, go for 2 upgrades, and then that will put me at 13 additional strength, which will put me at 25. So I'm actually quite threatening here, and I was hoping that at the next turn I can pull off a nice war. I do draw even another war, which I was very happy to see, because that really gives me quite some big military potential now that I have taken those cards. And I also draw the Fortifications tactic, which is not bad to have with the Great Wall, but with playing to go for Rifleman, it might also be relatively difficult to make the transition into it. Swin won't cede, he will go for the international agreement. Wants to have additional resource production, PV4 will get additional food production this turn. With playing the cultural heritage, he will be able to go for the constitutional monarchy, increases his population, takes the cannons and the patriotism. Then it's Angor's turn, and he will again try an aggression against PV4. Probably doesn't have anything else to do with his politics phase. Because of the open borders agreement, PV4 has to discard another defense card. So Angor then will finish the Harvard College and will just take the selective breeding. He will not take this Republic, but he probably has a very good chance to take the second copy of Republic at the next turn, and so he probably just wanted to make sure that he has this copy of selective breeding available. And PV4 will cede. On top are the new deposits. Rune gains some additional resource, Angor gains the most, Swin gains the least resources, and then PV4 has enough science to go for the Republic, and with the new deposits he has also enough resource to finish the Kremlin, and that out of the sudden puts him at a very strong position. I mean, he had enough science to go for the government form, and I also knew about the Kremlin, so it's not that surprising, but it still is quite a big boost that he gets this turn. And he is now sitting at 10 civil actions already, now at the middle of H2, and has also at the moment 4, once he loses the open borders agreement, 3 military actions. So here has quite a powerful position, and then he has now quite a lot of civil actions left to just take some cards. He takes the Elm Growth, the Breakthrough, and the cannons. And now at this turn I definitely want to go for this war. There's even Nobel available, which will allow me to go for even more strength. None of my opponents went for him, so I definitely wanted to go for the war. The question that I had to ask myself is, which war do I want to go for, and of course also which player do I want to go against. And I was looking at my opponents, and I was really bit threatened of PV4's position, of the potential that he has with that many civil actions, and I thought it might be quite important to disrupt him here. But it's not only that. PV4, while going for a very strong turn that gave him quite a big boost, he also left himself a little bit vulnerable, because he has 5 signs. With that he has not enough to go for cannons or cavalrymen, and there is the knowledge of the ancients is out, so there could only be a scientific breakthrough as a potential helpful event that gives him more science. And even if he gets more science, he's only sitting at 9 resources, so he has not enough resources to go for 2 H2 units. So for example, if he had 10, then if the scientific breakthrough revealed, he could go for 2 cavalrymen, and maybe he has the classic army or something like this. But if he really to really be a lot of threatening, he would need more science and more resources. I mean, maybe if he gets more science, he has the cannons in the defensive army, but maybe that at least could be nice for me long term, because I can copy it at some point. And so PV4 is relatively vulnerable. If he doesn't get any helpful stuff, then he might just be able to go for maybe another swordsman. He could potentially, of course, go for 3 swordsmen. He has enough resource for that. But then he would have to delete a lot of stuff, so that also would be very costly for him. And so he's very vulnerable, and he has also quite a strong position. If he doesn't get disrupted in the next turns, I think he really might be able to build up quite a strong position. And the other players are also just maybe a little bit more threatening, especially Swin. Angor not that much, but Swin, He has also only 5 science speed. He has knights in hand instead of cavalryman, and with that he, for example, could just have classic army, could go for 2 knights. Also, PvP4 already is an H2 leader, and the other players could potentially still go for Napoleon, which also boosts their strength potential a little bit. So Swin, I was basically out of the question. If he gets something helpful like some additional science, then he has even a lot of potential. If he then has defensive army, could even lose the war maybe. But Angor is maybe not that threatening. He has only 4 civil actions, so he can't that easily react to a bunch of stuff or can't take a lot of cards. So if Napoleon is available, he could of course take him, but it would be relatively costly. He also doesn't have a free population, so he also doesn't have that much strength potential, but with only sitting at 4 civil actions, which of course he will boost, so that will be improved very soon. But I just was thinking PV4 has just the strong position. And then I also thought about going for the Volvo technology first, and he maybe also has the more interesting technologies to steal, or more technologies to steal. Code of Laws and Masonry. The Code of Laws could be quite nice to have. I would be even more flexible or economically strong with having more civil actions, and so I made the decision to go against PV4, and I went for the Volvo technology. And one big reason is that if I take now some science away from PV4, he again very likely won't have enough science to go for a military technology also in 2 turns, which could mean that he remains very weak, which then could mean that I couldn't pull off a very big war territory as a second war. So no, then that basically also makes sure that I can get a very strong second war going, and then he also gets just very much disrupted, loses a lot of stuff. And no, I thought if I don't disrupt him here, if I try to go against the other players, maybe I can still do something nice, but I also thought PV4 has quite a strong position here. I mean, I maybe would still have a big strength lead, so maybe I could go then for some aggressions, but I felt it makes the most sense to go against PV4, and so I went for this Volvo technology. I will then develop the strategy, I will develop the rifleman, I can play the reserves for food, use Barbarossa, go for 2 more upgrades, more I can't do because I have not enough military actions, and then I can also go for Nobel, putting myself at 27 strength, so that's quite a lot, and at the next turn I have the potential to go for another war and even another 3 upgrades potentially, which then could mean that I can even go up to 33 strength. So that is quite a lot. Now I have 2 civil actions left, and I thought about taking a happy face solution, because those 2 organized religions are the last happy face solutions left, but I also thought about taking this copy of selective breeding. I didn't want to take this justice system, because I was hoping that I maybe can steal the Code of Laws from PV4, and so no, I had to, my decision was basically between organized religion and selective breeding. There is another copy of selective breeding, and PV4s might still need one, but Swin already has irrigation, Angor has already one, so I can maybe just wait for another copy. But I also felt it could be quite nice to already go for selective breeding upgrades at the next turn maybe. Maybe in addition to some upgrades, I could go for 3 upgrades and also 1 upgrade to selective breeding potentially at the next turn. Actually not, yeah, I could, yes, I could go for this 1 upgrade and 3 upgrades to Rifleman. But, and the other problem is that if I take maybe the organized religion, then there is a chance that the selective breeding will be discarded before my next turn, and maybe PV4 has other stuff to do than taking it, and then maybe it could be that a second copy will actually be contested. Maybe it's not guaranteed that I will be able to get it, and so at the end I went for the selective breeding. That of course on the other means that I might miss out on the organized religion, but I was here hoping here that the war over territory might help me with that. With that I hopefully will be able to steal quite a bunch of yellow tokens, and then I don't have hopefully any big happy face issues, so that I can maybe allow myself to risk missing out on the organized religion. I can keep all of my cards in hand, Swin seats, and the strategic territory is revealed. A colony, I am not willing to bid for that, and Swin is able to win it for Swordsman and a colonization card. He will go for 1 upgrade to irrigation, goes for even building an additional farm, interestingly. He's even deleting a Swordsman, builds an additional lab, takes the breakthrough, takes the frugality, and develops the knight. So he does a really interesting turn here, and get some food production going, and I think him disbanding a swordsman and building the slab is a really big indicator that he has a tactic in hand where he needs knights and cannons. So he just needs this additional science in order to get the knights and the cannons out, and with that he can maybe go for mobile artillery or maybe also Napoleonic army, and that might make him a lot more threatening. Maybe he's also bluffing again, that of course could also be the case. He leaves himself very vulnerable to an aggression, but he, on the other hand, makes himself better prepared for a war, because he's just threatening quite a bit with having wave, patriotism, the cannons, so he has definitely some potential. And with going for this farm and having the frugality, he is also enough food to go for 2 more population immediately at the next turn. Then it's Angor's turn. He will seed, and another colony is revealed, the vast territory, which I was actually willing to bid. 1 warrior and the cards that I have, it would cost me a little bit from the war, but it is also quite a nice colony to have, especially with me potentially missing out in the organized religion. And so I was willing to bid, but Angor is able to win it, and he sends a warrior, pays 1 resource, and also sends another colonization card away. Angor then goes for the Republic, that will give him a big boost. He increases population, goes for another knight, and he has the Hussars actually available, so goes up to 15 strength, and then he takes the efficient upgrade, the organized religion, and also the rifleman. And the other organized religion will be discarded now, so I indeed will miss out on it. PV4 goes for the Transcontinental Railroad. He will increase his population, builds an additional team spot, so for only 1 resource, that gives him 2 additional strength. He could have also built a swordsman, but the swordsman also only gives 2 additional strength, and the team spots is cheaper. That allows him to go for this irrigation, while also still having enough resource to finish the railroad at the next turn. And with going for the irrigation, he has just enough food to increase his population at the next turn, because the age will end and he will lose 2 yellow tokens, so he has now enough food. And he is still, with getting this team spots very cheaply, has enough resource to finish the railroad at the next turn, and that will maybe allow him to get a little bit of strength, because I will steal a lot of science, so he again can't invest into his military technologies at the next turn. Then I will steal some stuff away. I definitely wanted to take the Code of Laws, and then the question was, do I just want to take all of the science from PV4, or do I also want to have the masonry? I thought about not taking the masonry, then I was toying around with maybe going for the architecture, but the good thing about stealing those technologies with the forward technology is that they are actually in play immediately. So of course the architecture might be better, especially with the journalisms, maybe I can save quite a bunch more resources. But when I steal the masonry, I just have it in play already. If I go for the architecture, I have to take and develop it, spend 2 civil actions and also 3 more science than the masonry would cost. So that just felt a little bit too costly for me, and I felt the masonry could still be quite useful for me. So I stole the Code of Laws, the masonry, and 6 science, so that was quite a big war. And I will also immediately go for the next war. It will again be against PV4. At this point, it's not that much any longer that PV4 is that strong of a position. I still think he has a position that has quite a bit of potential. He still has 9 civil actions now that he lost the Code of Laws. The railroad gives him some economical advantage. But yeah, here at this point is quite a bit damaged, so Angor maybe could definitely also be considered when we only take into perspective how much I potentially want to hurt or disrupt a player. So at this point that is not that big of a deal, but with stealing the science from PV4, he again can't go for military attack. Also, he didn't leave himself with that many resources left, so he has just the lowest military potential. He will very likely finish the railroad, and he is at 17 strength. Angor already is at 15. He might be able to go for the cavalryman. I of course could take it away, but that's not really what I would wanted to do at my turn. And also he maybe could go for Napoleon if SAPOFANE doesn't go for him. He could even go for Rifleman, have another tactic, but then he would have to destroy lots. So I was thinking he would probably stay on Hussars, but if I don't take the cavalryman away, he could go for that potentially with Napoleon. Then he has just a bigger strength potential, and I just wanted to steal as many yellow tokens as I can, because with missing out in the organized religion, it might be quite important to have as many of them as possible, to not have any uprising issues for as long as possible. So I go for the war territory. I wanted to go for 1 upgrade to selective breeding. I can go for this 1 upgrade, and I can still go for 3 upgrades to Rifleman then. But I had to ask myself, do I want to actually go for those 3 upgrades? And you see that I will actually go for all 3 upgrades, but that means that now I can't go for another farm upgrade. If I would have said that I maybe go for one less upgrade, I could have played the reserves for resources, and then I could have gone for, or even I wouldn't have even necessarily have to play the reserves for resources. I could even go for another farm upgrade without playing it if I don't spend those 3 resources in the last upgrade, and then I could just go for another farm upgrade, get the food production going quicker. And no. But the thing is, with this additional warrior, I will steal an additional yellow token, very likely, because PV4 very likely will go up to 17 strength with finishing the railroad, and then now I have 16 strength more, otherwise I only would have 14 strength more. However, I did consider to, when I don't go for this and go for an additional farm upgrade, to then go for the navigation. I felt it could maybe be a relatively nice technology to have anyway. On the other hand, I don't have knowledge about any colonies, so it also is a little bit of a gamble in regards of the colonies, but still it gives me a bit of additional strength, and it's maybe not that bad. I have a lot of science, and then I could still steal 1 yellow token more, and I could go for the farm upgrade. But then I would have to spend more civil actions, meaning that I can't take those cannons, and I felt like I want to take those cannons. I could maybe hope that Angor doesn't take it. He is the last opponent without a copy of it, and he has the hussars, but it could still definitely be possible that he takes it away, and I just wanted to have the cannons with having the Great Wall. Maybe I can slowly make a transition into the fortifications, and I just also have 1 piece that I maybe need to be prepared for H3 tactics. And no, and with that I didn't like the navigation too much, and also I just felt like it's not that certain how much value it will actually give me. I don't have knowledge about colonies. It will give me a bit of additional strength, but if I invest my science into it, and I also thought about going for journalism at the next turn potentially, and then I invest quite a bit of science, and maybe that will prevent me from going for an H3 government. A turn earlier I have the monarchy, an H3 government could be quite nice, and so I really wanted to save my science up for H3, to maybe get a nice H3 government, and to also have enough science to maybe go for some other stuff in H3. And with that I just went for another upgrade so that I steal the additional yellow token, and then I played the reserves for food, otherwise I will lose it, and I thought it was very nice to be able to increase my population at the next turn. And then at the next turn, and another advantage of not going for this upgrade now is that I can use the efficient upgrade at the next turn. I still would have probably taken it when I went for the other play, but then it would more be of a potentially nice card if I maybe get computers or oil, but like this it gives me some guaranteed value. And then, as said, I wanted to take those cannons. I just felt it's very nice and very important to have those in hand, and I didn't like it too much to go for the navigation, so I at the end ended up going for this turn. Sadly, when I want to go for the journalism, I'm missing 1 resource to also go for the farm upgrade, but there's still the border conflict in the deck, so I was hoping that maybe with the border conflict I might be possible to go for 1 farm upgrade and for building 1 journalism at the next turn with getting 1 free population. Then that's my turn. Svin will also go for a war actually. He is very low in strength at the moment, 6 strength behind PV4, but that probably indicates that he will increase his strength by quite a lot this turn. He will go for Napoleon, he will develop the cannons while still having Leonardo to score an additional resource. He will play the Wave of Nationalism to gain a 6 additional resource from that, and then he will switch to Napoleon, will increase his population 2 times, builds a knight, builds a warrior, and he also goes for 1 more lab upgrade to get out of corruption, and then he has the mobile artillery tactic, which puts him at 22 strength. Then it's Angor's turn, and he wants to go for Newton. He still needs a new leader. He has already Republic, and Cook maybe could be interesting, but he rather wants to have the economical value from Newton. He elects him, and at the moment he doesn't get any additional science out of him, but what he can do is to save some civil actions. So he goes for the cavalryman, and also for the selective breeding, goes for 2 upgrades, goes for some upgrades to the cavalryman, and then he also takes this engineering genius. Now H3 starts, and also PV4 has to defend himself now against those 2 wars. He sees the rebellion is revealed, the rebellion is opened, Svin will lose 2 civil actions to that. And then PV4 will finish the Transcontinental Railroad, and is with that at 17 strength, takes the military build-up, takes the reserves, and takes the rich lands, so he can take some yellow cards. At the next turn, or actually, again, he won't have enough science to go for a military attack. He has another war with technology against him, so that's quite unfortunate for him. And at the next turn, again, he might be a bit vulnerable, but at least for him, the most H2 wars are now already out of the deck, so maybe he will get a little bit of breathing room now. I will steal 4 yellow tokens from a PV4, and I have only one event in hand, and with being the strongest I want to push, especially because one of the top 2 events is the border conflict, and it could be quite nice to open that border conflict in order to be able to go for a farm upgrade and a journalism. And I was very happy to see that the border conflict is indeed on top. It is not the last event, and with that I will be able to make my turn even better. I can increase my population, I can go for journalism, just getting a bit more science production going, a bit more culture production going. I just felt it is a nice investment for 7 resources. I still leave myself with enough science to go for an H3 government farm at the next turn, and then I can also use the sufficient upgrade to go in for another farm upgrade, that I can make sure that I can increase my population at the next turn, and then I take the sufficient upgrade and I play the revolutionary idea. And with having that much science and also with having the sufficient upgrade, I felt like I'm prepared for a lot of strong options for my next turns, depending on what cards will be available for me from the row. With having all of that science, it could be very nice to get something like democracy, communism, maybe even this fundamentalism, even though it would be maybe a little bit costly to invest into it. But if I want to go for even more military, maybe if I draw an early war or something, then of course that also could be interesting, but especially democracy or communism could maybe even be a little bit better and could give me a big boost. But with the sufficient upgrade, I'm also nicely prepared for cards like computers or oil. If those cards are on the row, thanks to the efficient upgrade, I could go for computers or for oil and go for 2 upgrades immediately, making sure that I get a very big boost going. So I was hoping that I'm, with all of that, very nicely prepared for some different options, and I was hoping that one of those options will be available for me at the next turn. With my last civil action, instead of playing the revolutionary idea, I also could have maybe taken the opera. Maybe it's not bad to have it in hand, just to maybe get a little bit more culture reduction going, but there's just not any synergy in H3, and so I rather at the end just played the revolutionary idea and thought that maybe I rather want to go for some H3 stuff, maybe movies, because the opera just didn't feel too great to build. I can maybe instead rather go for an additional journalism and then maybe go for movies at some point, or just go for oil and computers and go for some synergizing leaders like Bill Gates or Marie Curie. And so at the end I just played the revolutionary idea. I draw 3 cards. The mechanized army could maybe be interesting, but the transition will be relatively difficult. But the impacts are maybe more interesting. Architecture has some potential at the moment. Some of my opponents have the better architecture, but I can maybe build towards it. And the harmony, that could be seedable, because if I only build 1 more urban building, I already have a harmony of 20, and then it could maybe be even nice to have it already revealed relatively early. There's an early Bill Gates. SAPOFANE, first of all, will steal 5 science from PV4, so PV4 is again back to only 2 science. SAPOFANE then will use the military action from Napoleon with deleting a swordsman. He doesn't really need that much with having the mobile artillery tactic. Also needs to fix his uprising, and then he will actually go for Bill Gates. He is only in bronze mines, so getting the 3 additional resources that Bill Gates will give him quite a big boost, and it also will allow him to free up some population. Now he maybe can allow himself to destroy some bronze mines, of course still somewhat costly, but it allows him to gain 2 free population, allows him to get out of corruption, and with that he's at 24 strength and maybe can defend himself. Only 1 H3 card, for example, would be enough for that, and at least he has still 5 resource production now that he has Bill Gates going. Then Angor will go for reserves, will play the reserves for food, will increase his population, builds another cavalryman, and can increase his population again thanks to playing the reserves with the Harvard College. Is now at 31 strength, so he also maybe wants to make sure that he isn't in any danger of getting hit by an aggression, and then he takes a scientific method. At the next turn he can maybe develop that and upgrade it and then get a nice boost with Newton. PV4 seats, and the immigration is revealed. He has the most happy faces and gets an additional population out, and he also has some unhappy workers, so that allows him to pick Mandela. And then he builds an additional team sports, doesn't get the most additional culture out of Mandela because he doesn't have that much of a yellow bank left, but he still gets in a total of 3 culture, and he gets an additional civil action, and with that I think Mandela is still quite strong. I think the civil action really can be strong in age 3, so I think it still makes a lot of sense to go for him. He then builds an additional mine, is now at 10 resource production, takes the tanks, takes the fundamentalism away, maybe doesn't want to give that to me, that could give me quite a big boost. And he also takes the satellites, so he actually takes all of the cards from the second row that you also don't see that often, that requires quite a lot of civil actions, but with having 10 again now that he went for Mandela, he's able to do it. That means that a lot of new cards revealed, and one very interesting card is already coming down with the oil. But let's see if there may be some interesting alternatives. And there's a copy of Air Force, but no, not really anything that boosts my economy. With that, the oil might be very nice, but if I go for the oil, maybe I will miss out on the Air Forces. So I have to think about if that will be worth it for me. First of all, I will see the impact of how many assets should turn out to be relatively nice. Hopefully, also I'm the strongest, so it could be very nice to push. On the other hand, this event was seeded by PV4, so maybe it is not a strength event, and the event it is opened is actually a bit annoying for me, because it is the Ravages of Time, which will cause me to either lose the Forbidden City or the Great Wall, and both is not really great. Losing the civil action from the Forbidden City now is quite annoying, and with having missed out on the Happy Face solution, it even gets me a little bit in danger with having some uprising issues soon, or at least some some issues with my Happy Faces. But the Great Wall would really drop me down in strength. I would not be the strongest any longer, and so it was a bit of a tough decision for me which one I will lose, but I think at the end the Forbidden City is maybe the right choice. Sadly, I will now drop down to 6 civil actions, which is a little bit limiting, but it still allows me to go for oil, to develop the oil, and to go for 2 upgrades. The bad thing now is that with losing the Forbidden City, I have to increase my population now to fix the uprising, which means that I don't have a free civil action to take the movies. Now that I have to get the oil going, I felt the movies could be a nice thing to invest into, especially also with having the impact of architecture now. So now a theater technology, I definitely would have liked to take it. So I considered destroying the Great Wall instead of the Forbidden City. Then I would not have uprising issues, and I would have an additional civil action, so I could relatively easily take the movies. But I just felt a little bit vulnerable. At the moment I have a big strength lead, but at the moment I also don't have a tactic that I can easily make work. I don't have the most free populations, and SVin, for example, I won't take those air forces. If he gets those and has the mobile artillery, he might have some potential over the next turns to build up some strength, and maybe Angor potentially as well, but I was mostly afraid of SVin, and then I just felt a lot safer with still having the Great Wall. I could of course take the Air Force, but I just think this oil gives me a very, very big boost. And at the moment I still have enough strength, and maybe I still have the chance to take another copy of Air Force. Maybe I will be able to go for a nice H3 tactic at some point. And so I was willing to miss out on the Air Forces in order to get this nice oil going. And just going for those 2 upgrades immediately is just quite strong. But sadly I won't be able to take the movies because I have to increase my population as my last civil action. Now it could be very nice to get Bro Sports at some point, or maybe Steve Jobs if he still is available. Maybe if I then get computers, he could be one solution for my Happy Faces, but other than that, there might only be Bro Sports left. I was quite happy about this draw. I draw a lot of tactics, and 2 of them I probably don't need, but one of them is really, really great for me, the positional army. That definitely made me feel a lot safer. With that, I might just always relatively easily be able to threaten a nice amount of strength. Maybe even I can even go for war myself, but if I don't get the Bro Spots, I might have not enough happy workers to really make that worth it. SVin seats, and the Independence Declaration is revealed. PV4 is the weakest, but he has no colonies. SVin will then go for an additional arena. He will be willing to take the Air Forces and also takes the Urban Growth. That maybe allows him to go for more computer upgrades in case computers should be available for him. Angor will go for an aggression, so PV4 gets hit by something again. This time he will get hit by the raid. Angor gains 6 additional resources, and PV4 will lose both of those labs, so that's definitely quite bad for him. Angor will then go for Steve Jobs, so he won't be available for me. Angor also has to fix his Happy Faces. but he maybe just wants to go for scientific method and doesn't want to be distracted with that. He is willing to develop the scientific method with Steve Jobs, so he doesn't want to save the civil action from Newton, but instead he has not a possibility to get some additional culture already going with Steve Jobs. Maybe didn't have nice use for the last civil action, and then he will just take the patriotism, which should be a very important card for him, with at the moment only being on 2 military actions because he lost the Colosseum to the Ravages of Time. Also, we are at the end of or at the beginning of age 3, so we can maybe take a look at the overview. I was very happy about my position. I have the second most culture, I have a very strong economy. I was a bit worried about my happy phases, but I think I have quite a nice position here. Before at the moment has still more culture, but he got hit by a lot of wars and aggressions, so that even though he has still a lot of civil action, so he's definitely not out of the game, but he has definitely some issues, especially also with his a low yellow bank that he has left now. Swin had to destroy a bunch of bronze mines. If he gets computers with Bill Gates, he definitely might get a big boost. Angor has also a nice science production going, has no Steve Jobs. So my opponents have something going, but I felt like I have a very nice position, especially maybe if I should get a government form going relatively soon, then I maybe get an even bigger boost. And then I felt like I have maybe a good position to potentially win this game. PV4 will seed, and the civil unrest is revealed. Sadly, I will get hit by that and will lose 4 culture and a blue token to that. PV4 has enough science to develop the cannons, however after that he has not a lot of science left, and he also lost all of his science production. He can use the military build-up and build 2 cannons. He will rebuild one of the labs, and with getting the patriotism and the reserves, he makes sure to get some resources going, and he will rebuild that. It doesn't help him immediately, but maybe if he gets a copy of Revolutionary Idea at some point, then it will allow him to go for another technology. Now it is my turn. I won't seed. I was not too convinced if the impact of architecture will be very nice for me. Definitely has some potential, but I just didn't want to seed it yet. I will go for the civil service here, that I have just a lot of science, and even though I already have the code of laws, I thought it might be quite nice for me. And one thing that I had to question my order that I thought about was denying the computers from Swin, because if he gets the computers he can go for 2 upgrades immediately, and it might give him quite a nice boost. And that could be quite nice for him. But if I take the computers, I won't be able to go for the spaceflight or to take any wonder. Then there's only Fast Food Chain's Manhattan Project left. 2 wonders that both could be decent for me, but I also don't know for certain when those will be available and how nicely I will be able to take them. And also there are still 2 copies of computers left, so of course maybe I could take it and then a nice winner, nice option. But it could also be the case that just the second copy of computers is revealed immediately, and then I have just overpaid for a card that I probably wouldn't have taken otherwise. So even though that gives him a boost, I was willing to give him that in this situation. He has only 1 bronze mine, so even if he gets 2 upgrades, he will still only be at 9 resource production, so I will still have more. And so I just felt like I rather want to concentrate myself on my own civilization, and I was hoping that even with getting computers, when maybe he still has the worse position than me with only having this 1 bronze mine, but it definitely might give him a boost, and I was a little bit worried about it. But I also was hoping that my position is still relatively strong compared to his, and I will go for the civil service. That makes it that I don't have corruption. I also have more civil actions for the next one. I will take the space flight. That should end up being quite a strong wonder for me. And then with my last civil action I just take those movies, because otherwise I might not be able to take those movies, and with having that many resources, with having the impact of architecture, I definitely wanted to have those movies. It will allow me to go for a lot of culture production. And also, in case I should miss out on the pro sports, if I don't get the movies, then I only would be able to build 2 more religions. Now I have the potential to maybe build 2 religions, but also some movies. So even if I miss out on the pro sports, it would be costly, would not be efficient, but I could still maybe somehow prepare for an impact of happiness or something. So I just think that's an important card to take here. And the civil service is then needed to get out of corruption. I could have also thought about Pierre. Maybe could just keep more Nobel and then go for Pierre, and also I was kind of hoping to get Bro Sports, and then of course if I should get those, Pierre might be quite interesting. However, if I have Pierre, maybe my opponents have also even more reason to deny the Bro Sports, which could then be annoying, and there are also still some other nice leaders left. Einstein could be nice, I have some science saved up, and Marie Curie also works relatively nicely with the oil, and also I would have to easily miss out on the civil service or the movies, and so at the end I didn't go for Pierre here. I will draw 3 cards, and I will draw the Impact of Happiness. It's maybe at least nice to know that that isn't in the deck, if I don't see it. The popularization of science is revealed. Angor gains the most out of the fit. I gain 8. Swin gets 6. It's a bit annoying for Swin because he will actually improve his science production with going for the computers this turn. There was not a second copy revealed, so denying it maybe would have hurt his position. But I even think with those 2 upgrades, it's definitely a big improvement for him. But he's still only at 9 resource production. It's not that his position is completely escalating yet. But there's still a bit of time left, and of course Bill Gates has often already done something great, so I was certainly a little bit worried also with having that many signs saved up now. Angor seeds the Cold War is revealed. That wasn't seeded by me, but I was really happy to see it. I have a lot of science, but getting even 6 more is quite nice, especially because now that I went for the civil service, I maybe don't have that much left to easily go for an H3 government form while still doing some other stuff, but now with the Cold War that might be more easily possible. Angor will just take the Manhattan Project, maybe he's a little bit in danger, or feels like he's a bit in danger with her only being into military actions, or maybe even, who knows, wants to prepare for a war himself, but he has just this engineering genius, and it will give him a somewhat decent amount of culture, so he just goes for the Manhattan Project and also takes the movies and a revolutionary idea. Both Swin and Angor save up a lot of science, maybe they are waiting to potentially get some Nobel Prizes going as soon as I will replace Nobel. PV4 will play 2 reserves that allows him to get another population going. He will take the endowment, rebuilds the slab, and then also goes for an upgrade to the farms, takes the air forces. Now it's my turn. I will actually see the Impact of Happiness, and it probably will indicate something to you. There is a Bro spot, it's even the second one, so that wasn't denied, and it probably also wasn't really easy to deny. 2 of my opponents would have taken one in order to make this possible, and I made a decision to go for those Bro spots this turn. The prosperity is revealed. Of course, I also would have liked to go for movies, but the thing is I can't go for the democracy and for movies. And the democracy I think is just a very nice boost, getting more civil actions, getting more culture production, and then I can't go for movies, but I can go for Bro Sports, so I go for that, and then with building this Bro Sports, and maybe I still luckily have just enough science to go for movies at a following turn, and then I can maybe get the 4 more happy faces now, and then maybe 2 more happy faces with building 2 movies. So I just went for that, and then I have 3 civil actions left. I will increase my population, that's just enough to get me out of corruption, and I think then it's very important that I, with my last 2 civil actions, take this copy of rockets. Because there's a small chance that the age might end before my next turn, and then it could be quite dangerous if that happens, then I would lose the cannons, and if I don't take the rockets, then it might be taken away, there's no copy left, and out of the sudden I can't go for tactic, and I could potentially get hit by a war, so that is a very dangerous scenario, and I think I have to just make sure that this doesn't happen. So I take the rockets, also it's very nice. I have 10 science at the next turn, so for example I could go for movies at the next turn and then for rockets in 2 turns, or if I need the strength I can go for rockets at the next turn, movies in 2 turns, so that just works out very nicely with my science. I have a lot of resources saved up, and with this tactic I just felt like I have a great position with the democracy, with being able to build movies, and also with having the rockets and this tactic being able to hopefully threaten enough strength so that I don't get hit by a war. I keep the tactic, the impact, and some defense cards in hand. I draw the Impact of Science. Probably I won't see this one because Swin has a lot of science and Angor as well. The Impact of Harmony is revealed. That was seeded by me. It gives plus 20 to PV4 as well as to me, plus 16 for Swin. It's not a great card for Angor, who only gains 8 culture out of it. Swin this turn will go for the fast food chains, and allows him to go for another one. They will go for another upgrade to computers. Goes for the communism. Interestingly builds the religion and then increases population. Could have also built a bread and circuses, but he maybe just wants to have the culture production going. maybe he gets punished by some events, but maybe that also means that he has knowledge about some happy face related events. Civil unrest is out, maybe he has discarded immigration. He could potentially get punished if a lot of seeding is happening, then the impact of happiness could be revealed, but if not, then the religion might just give him more culture, and maybe he wanted to build this at some point anyway. Then it's Angor's turn, he seeds, and economic progress is revealed. That was maybe seeded by Swin. I think he seeded one of those two events, and he maybe knew at that point that he was going for Bill Gates, but of course I was also quite happy about it. Now I'm even at 40 resources saved up. Angor goes for the military theory. It's very nice for him to get more military actions going. He also can score some culture with Steve Jobs. Then he will finish the Manhattan Project, scoring 9 culture, going up to 49 strength. So he's definitely looking somewhat dangerous, but he doesn't have the most resource saved up, so he can't threaten that much. He will have 10 with the patriotism, so he can maybe go for another Hussars tactic. That would put him at 59, but he should not be able to do a lot more. PV4 will increase his population, and otherwise he would just lose the yellow token when the age will end, and then he develops the cavalryman, plays the patriotism, takes the revolutionary idea, another revolutionary idea, builds the cavalryman, reveals the Napoleonic army, and he's even willing to destroy one mine. He still has a very decent production to go for another cavalryman, making sure that he doesn't get hit by an aggression from Angor. And then he takes the computers with the 2 revolutionary ideas. He will have enough science to go for computers and satellites, maybe potentially scoring a Nobel Prize at the next turn. Now it's my turn. I will seed the impact of architecture this turn, because now it's really looking like I can make this quite big. I will go for some movies, also a bro sport this turn, and so I just wanted to seed this one into the deck. The arms industry is revealed. That gives me 2 additional resources. And then I will just go for movies. I will build one, I will build a second one, I will increase my population again, that is enough to get me out of corruption. And then I can also go for Marie Curie. Einstein maybe could also be considered. Maybe I will develop 2 technologies, so I could elect him now and get 6 culture, but Marie Curie, if I elect her now, also gives me 6 culture, increase my science production, gives me a bit of additional strength, so she just should be the stronger leader here, I think. And then I also will take both of those reserves, making it that I can really do a lot of stuff at my next turn. And now that was a little bit of a puzzle, depending on what I want to do at the next turn. For it, I'm already thinking about which impacts I want to prepare for. And now, originally I thought that I probably definitely want to elect Marie Curie now, just getting the 3 culture production going now, but after thinking a little bit more about it, I thought that maybe it is even bad for me to elect Marie Curie now, because the problem is I really don't have a lot of science. I can only go for the rockets at the next turn, but actually all of my opponents have enough science to go for at least 1 Nobel Prize, and Swin and Angor, with having that many science saved up, I maybe even need to have the potential to go for 2. That might be a little bit costly, because they have to take a lot of technologies to make that happen, but it might be possible. So, but I think they easily should be able to go for 1. And PV4, even though he doesn't really have a lot of science, with those 2 revolutionary ideas, he is just enough to go for satellites and computers. So all of my opponents would be able to go for Nobel Prize. I would be the only one that can't go for Nobel Prize, and also Nobel doesn't give a civil action back, so if I elect Marie Curie now or at the next turn, doesn't change anything from the amount of civil actions that I have available, and she only would give me 3 culture reduction. Now, of course, a little bit of additional strength, a little bit of additional science, but I probably don't really need those of 2 features, and so I actually made the decision to just keep her in hand. And then the question is, what do I want to do with my last civil action? One thing that I really wanted to do is to get more strength, because I felt I have a really nice position and the age will end, and that will mean that I will discard 2 of my age 2 defense cards, and if I stay at my current amount of strength, and I will even lose Nobel, which I should not forget, then I would be in danger of an aggression, and I wanted to make sure that I am not in danger of an aggression, and so I wanted to increase my strength. I thought about building another rifleman, but I didn't like it too much, because investing into that might reduce the amount of stuff that I can do at my next turn. So instead I build 1 Pro Sports. That gives me more strength. I will lose Nobel, then I'm at 39, but I have just enough to defend against an aggression from Angor, and with drawing some new cards I also would be able to defend another aggression if PV4 would go for one, which they probably won't, but I not vulnerable to that. So that should be very nice. Or that is very nice to not be vulnerable against it. Actually, I will lose 2 strength from Nobel, so actually I might be vulnerable. So if Angor tries to go for an aggression, I have to use the defense card and 4 cards. I will draw 3 ones. Then actually it might be that PV4 could potentially go for an aggression, but that is already a little bit of an edge case scenario. And so I didn't really wanted to prepare for that. It's also not that easily possible. A rifleman would only give me +4 strength, but I am able to defend against an aggression from Angor. And so I build this Pro Sports, and the good thing is that will also give me +3 for the impact of architecture. At the next turn I will have 28, and with those 2 reserves 36 resource, so I have potentially enough resource to even finish the space flight and go for 2 movies. However, in order to achieve this, I might have to skip some other stuff, like either maybe I have to delete a unit in order to have enough civil actions, but that could be dangerous, or I have to miss out on something like going for rockets, so maybe I will also do something different at my next turn, but I have the potential, I can just build even more urban buildings at the next turn. I have enough food to get 1 more population going. Actually not, because I will lose 2 population, but I could potentially also think about playing a reserves for food if I want to get a population, or I can just destroy a mine or an alchemy, because the impact of harmony is out. So yeah, I just felt like with that I'm relatively nicely to do some stuff, and then I can go for Marie Curie at the next turn. I was hoping that she is still worth it to go for, because of course I could have maybe also just skip her and maybe then done something else, but I also didn't have that much else to do anyway, and so I felt like she might still be just a nice way to get 3 additional culture and also some science and strength for just 2 civil actions, and so I still took her in hand. I draw 1 impact that I can see, the impact of industry. That is a relatively nice one for me. Age 4 starts, and SVin actually offers me the international tourism, and as you can see I reject this pact because it just doesn't give me really a lot. SVin at the moment is only the Stonehenge. I expected that he won't finish the fast food chains this turn, so I would, at my last turn, get 1 additional culture production out of it, but SVin would gain 2 additional culture production now and 3 additional culture production at the next turn, so he would get 5. I would only get 1. I still thought about it, because if I maybe come to the conclusion that the other 2 opponents are a bigger threat for my first place than SVin, then it could still be nice to get the 1 additional culture against PV4 and Angor, so I did some calculations and thought about which players maybe have the best shot at threatening me. At that point I felt very comfortable, and I was quite confident that I might be able to win this game. But I still wanted to do the right decision for this pact offer, and I came to the conclusion that it is actually relatively close between all of my opponents. SVin at the moment is behind in culture, but he will be the only one of my opponents who still gets a wonder, and he will get the Bill Gates bonus. He has also seeded the most impacts out of my opponents. And Angor is a bit behind before PV4, but he will get a lot of culture from Steve Jobs. PV4 is the most culture, but he won't get a wonder. And so it felt like it might be relatively equal between of my opponents, or relatively close, and with that I was not willing to give SVin 5 culture and only gain 1 culture for myself. SVin then builds 1 additional arena. That might be important for him because the impact of happiness is coming. He will also destroy a mine, builds an additional cannon, wants to get stronger, doesn't want to be in danger of any aggressions. He also develops the engineering, so he would have gone actually for Nobel Prize this turn and the next turn, so he would have been easily, or he would have still placed turns that would grant him 2 Nobel Prize even if the Nobel Prize aren't available. Angor goes for the democracy, also develops the Pro Sports, so he also would have gotten a Nobel Prize. Now he takes the urban growth, builds the Pro Sports, takes the mechanized agriculture, and at the next turn with the revolutionary idea is just enough science to also go for 2 technologies, so both of my opponents would have scored 8 if I would have elected Marie Curie already at my turn. Then it's PV4's turn, the last round is happening, and he will open the impact of progress. That is a bad impact for him, and it's also unfortunate for him that he opens it before he can go for the satellites at his turn, so that is quite a big one for his opponents, probably seeded by SVin, who gets the most out of it, and who also made sure to go for engineering and military theory at his last turn. And no, but it's also quite a decent impact for me. PvP4 will play both of the revolutionary ideas, plays the endowment for 4 culture, goes for 2 technologies, so he also would have scored 1 Nobel Prize, and then he just goes for 2 upgrades to his labs, has now 10 science productions, better prepared for a potential impact of science, and then builds even an additional cannon and an additional cavalryman. He knows that the impact of harmony is out, maybe he has no defense card and doesn't want to get hit by a potential aggression, and like this he can defend against one for certain. Maybe he is also suspecting that the impact of strength might be coming, maybe he even seeded it himself. Then it's my turn, I will seed the impact of industry. All of my opponents have a better science production than me. The impact of government is revealed, that is also a relatively nice one for me, maybe also seeded by SAPOFANE, who seeded 2 out of those 4 impacts. It's the best one for him, but it could have potentially also been seeded by one of the other opponents. This turn I will elect Marie Curie, I will destroy 1 lab, that will sadly cost me 1 for architecture, but the movie will give me even more for architecture. I will also destroy mine, sadly costing me +2 for the impact of industry. I will use this to build an additional arena. And as you can see, I don't go for 2 movies, I think that would just be a little bit too greedy. I could get hit by aggressions then, because I would be too weak. That's also the reason why I built this Pro Sports, gives me +3 for architecture. If I only would go for the points, then I could instead maybe just upgrade this mine for 3 more points for the impact of industry. Now I lost the mine -2 for industry and only gained 3 for architecture back, but I am stronger. Maybe there's an impact of strength coming, maybe SAPOFANE doesn't increase his strength, and also I can defend against an aggression. I have a very strong position, and I just think it's the best to play it safe here, so I just build those 2 urban buildings to make my impact of architecture very big, and then I can play the reserves for resource, I can develop the rockets, and then I have just enough civil actions left to finish the space flight for 29 points. Then it's SAPOFANE's turn, he will offer a peace treaty to Angor, so both of them will gain 1 additional culture. He develops the mechanized agriculture in the air forces, will finish the fast food chains, but before that he will make sure to make that a little bit bigger. Will build an H3 farm and an HA farm, so he has 5 farms actually, a nice combination of farms that he has, and can finish the fast food chains now for 22 points, but he also drops quite heavily in strength, but that is not that bad, because now he has this peace treaty ongoing, so maybe Angor shouldn't have accepted it. It only gives him +1 against PvP4 and me, but on the other hand, at least he gains this, and of course depends on whether he has an aggression or not. Angor won't seed, he will go for the mechanized agriculture, he will also go for the movies, going for 2 more technologies with Steve Jobs. Then he will build a religion, he doesn't really have enough resource left to do anything else, and then he can just increase his population 2 times. And now we can take a look at the culture before the final impacts, and we can see that I have a very big lead with getting already some nice impacts and having big culture reduction, getting the big space flight. So I don't think there's any way how my opponents could catch up to me, but we can see that's actually quite close between all of my opponents. PvP4 is 1 culture behind, only behind SAPOFANE, and then Angor is also not that far ahead. SAPOFANE of course will get the Bill Gates bonus, so no, he has a little bit of lead, so PvP4 is a little bit behind, but it's definitely still everything possible for the 3 of them. And then the impact of happiness is revealed, and that was seeded by me. It gives +16 for every player, so nothing changes. Then there's the impact of competition, that wasn't seeded by me, it still relatively nicely for me with building those pro sports. So I gain +21, Angor +15, it's quite a big one for PvP4, who gets +20. Maybe another reason to build those units, so that could have been very likely seeded by him, and now he's able to overtake SAPOFANE. Then there's the impact of agriculture, that is a nice one for SAPOFANE, a bad one for PvP4. SAPOFANE will gain +16 and overtakes PvP4 again, is now only 7 culture behind Angor. Then the impact of strength is quite nice for Angor, so he solidifies his 2nd place, and PvP4 gets +10 against SAPOFANE, taking the 3rd position again. Then there's the impact of industry, seeded by me, +10 for me, +6 for Angor, +6 for PvP4, 0 for SAPOFANE, so that's not a nice impact for him. And now there's only 1 impact left, and it is the impact of architecture, which was seeded by me, +21 for me, +7 for Angor, +12 for PvP4, he has a nice architecture. SAPOFANE as well, but he, after this, is 11 culture behind PvP4. He will get the Bill Gates bonus, but it is not enough to overtake PvP4. He is very close behind him at the end with 133 culture. And now I'm able to win this game. Angor is at the end at the 2nd position, PvP4 at the 3rd, and SAPOFANE at the 4th position. Yeah, so this game definitely went quite smoothly for me at the end. I think what was very nice for me was to gain those H2 wars and even 2 copies of them. I think that really gave me a big boost to my position, and really also made it that the Great Wall was used for quite some big gains. So I think the Great Wall worked out very nicely, but no, I think just those walls and also getting the strategy in the Rifleman it was very nice to have this option available. It not only helped me, it also made it possible to disrupt one potentially very strong civilization, because PvP4, with having 10 civil actions already in the middle of H2 while also having some solid resource and science production, was definitely looking quite threatening. And we can see, even with getting hit by 3 H2 wars and an H2 raid, he still finishes at the 3rd position and is not that much behind the 2nd position. So no, there we can maybe see how strong his position could have been if he if he wouldn't have been disrupted. So no, I think it was the right decision to go against him with the wars. I was able to steal quite a lot with the wars, and then I think I just went into H3 already with a nice position. As I said at this turn at the beginning of H3, I was prepared for an early government, I was prepared for computers, for oil, so I think I had a lot of options to build up something nice, and then oil was available, and then I went for the spaceflight, democracy, and movies, and pro sports, and then it just, was very nice at the end, and I'm able to win this game. So I'm of course very happy about this outcome. And with being able to win this game, we can also take a look now what that means for the standings. And there also have been 2 other games finished, and in those games PvP4 was able to get some wins in. He was able to win a 2-player game against Angor, and also was able to win the 3-player game against Angor and SAPOFANE. And with those, the standings are as follows. I'm very happy about my position. I'm in the 1st position, but I also have quite some less games finished than my opponents. I'm at 3 games finished, Angor has 5, and PvP4 and SAPOFANE already 6 games. So I think I have a very strong position now. 14 points, however, won't be enough to go to the next stage, very likely. So I still need to score some more points, but I have quite a nice amount of games to do so. So I think I have quite a nice position now. And then PvP4 didn't have a great start. He also only finished 3rd in the game that we just saw, but now with those 2 wins, he is definitely back in the running for at least the 2nd place. 1st place might be difficult, though it is also still possible. And he is at the moment at 11 points. Angor has probably still the better position. He has also 11 points, but has only 5 games finished, but only 1 less game than PvP4. And SAPOFANE, who had a relatively nice start with winning the 2 2-player games, has now lost this 4-player game and also this 3-player game, and is now also at already 6 games finished, but only 10 points. So he at the moment has the worst position, but it's really close between the 3 opponents. So there, everything can still happen. I'm very happy about my position, and hopefully I will be able to score some more points and then ideally even win my group. But I think I have now a very nice position to move on to the next stage, and as I said, hopefully maybe even win my group. Alright, then I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. I hope you're looking forward to the next games to come, and then thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.